Well, good evening. How are you this fine Tuesday evening? My name's Christine, and I'm going to run you through some tips to help you make your presentations really pop. So as I say, my name's Christine, and I'm one of the trainers for Google's free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. I'm a marketeer by trade, and in my career, I've had to do tons of presentations, not just when I'm training people, but in all kinds of other scenarios as well. Alongside me this evening, I have got Annie. Now, Annie's another of our incredibly experienced Google Digital Garage coaches and trainers. She's in the chat for you right now. She's going to moderate for me this evening. So what she's going to do is help us all out by answering any questions you've got. She's going to be dropping you some useful links if needed, and basically just keeping everything ticking over. So if you haven't already, do pop into the chat and say hi to Annie. You can tell you're speaking to the moderator. She's got a little blue spanner next to her name. To chat with her, you're going to need to be signed into your YouTube account. So now's a great time. If you're not, pop up to the box on the right there, sign up or sign into YouTube, and then you'll be able to chat with Annie. Any problems with the stream, best thing to do is just try refreshing it on YouTube. We have got the captions working for you, so they're the little CC icon. You should be able to see with that. And we will keep tonight's session live for you for till about lunchtime tomorrow UK time. So do feel free to use the link you used to get here this evening to jump back in and watch anything that you might have missed or you want to recap. Anything else you need to know, best thing to do is ask Annie or head to our website, which is linked in the description below. That will help you through what else is coming up on the schedule and the other ways of learning with us that you can go through. So let's have a look. Tonight, we've got a 15-minute power session where we are going to talk about presentations. And not the delivering of them or the construction of them so much, but how to really use visuals to improve the impact. So we'll start by thinking about, what impact can great graphics have? Why might we want to do this? And then we've got some top tips for you, which we're going to use 5 top tips to help really make your presentations stand out, to really drive home the impact that you want to have. And the reason is because graphics are very insightful, very impactful. Imagine you are just hearing the information, all right? When people hear information, so just using their ears and no other senses, they're only likely to remember 10% of that information 3 days later. So we're Tuesday to now. By Friday, you're only going to retain about 10% of what we're talking about this evening. However, if you pair a relevant image with that same auditory information, then people retained 65% of that information 3 days later. That's a huge 55% more information that's retained when graphics are used to accompany the key points. So the point of why we're talking about it tonight is really to ensure that you can use graphics to help your audience to understand what it is you need them to know. So think about the world around you. It is filled with symbols, with graphics, with visual information for kind of the same reason, all right? Our brains absorb better when we can both see and hear what we're trying to take in. So images help to facilitate understanding. There's an old saying that, a picture tells a story of 1,000 words. So by including imagery, you are really helping to understand those key points. You'll make the information you're trying to convey a lot more memorable. You can overcome language barriers. Think about the symbols and road signs. You don't have to speak the language to understand quite a lot of what's going on in the world around you. Images help us to tell those stories. They help us to remember those stories. And as, people delivering our presentation, they really help us to tell those difficult concepts, to communicate really well. So hopefully, you get the feeling that graphics are something that are great to have to help you illustrate a point. And what we can do now is take a look at some of our top tips for really making those presentations pop, for how to, okay, we know we need images. What are the best kinds of images to use? And how can we use the graphics really in a scientific and structured way to make sure we get the most from that knowledge? So our first top tip for you this evening is to think about your font. Your font is the typeface, the actual construction of the text on your design. And fonts are one of the first things people are going to see when they look at a design, especially for something like a presentation. So in order to make it as easy as possible to understand the information as quickly as possible, best thing to do is to keep the font's choice simple and probably limit yourself to one, maybe two at maximum, different kinds of fonts. Maybe one for the heading and then a different one for the body text. Making sure your fonts are easy to read, that they are bold and they are simple. If you go for a really flowy, flowery font, a kind of script font, it's going to be a lot harder to read. The eye will find it harder to read those complex fonts, which means the brain needs to put more brain power, more of its energy into understanding what's written. The best fonts are clear and they are easy to interpret. So rather than spending time working out what the letters actually say, your brain can spend the time in absorbing the information. So in our great example here, we've got a really simple font. We've highlighted mid-year sale. That's what we want people to know. We've got up to a 50% discount, and then we've got the website at the bottom. On our less easy to understand, the mid-year and the sale don't connect with each other. The sale isn't quite a fine writing, so it might not stand out as well at the back of the room or further away. And we've got lots of different things. We've got all three are in, each line is in a different font, which just isn't a nice design to look at. Okay, so we're going to keep those fonts clear, simple, and easy to read, which makes them easy to understand. Then we can think about colour. All right, so when we're thinking about creating really great graphics, top tip is to limit the colour palette to no more than 3 main colours. Okay, your colours should be complementary. Maybe you could have different shades of the same colour. So maybe a light colour, a dark colour, and then maybe a neutral colour. In this great example, they've actually gone for just the 2. They've got a blue and a grey, and they make it really easy to do. When I'm looking at this good example, this first example where we've got a grey and the blue and the grey, what my brain instantly does is understand that we're charting 2 things. We're charting one thing in blue against the thing in grey, and it moves through time. But the blue thing is the same each time, and the grey thing is the same each time. So you can actually, your brain automatically kind of, interprets that information. When we look at our second image, which has got lots of different colours on it, but also the colours change. We've got lights and darks of the same colour, but actually those changes of colours don't hold any meaning at all. It's trying to give you extra information, or your brain is trying to read extra information where there just isn't any, which creates confusion and actually makes it a lot harder to read. Okay, so remember, when you're thinking about your great graphics, limit your colours that you use, and I would have consistent colours throughout your presentation as well. A highlight colour, a secondary colour, and that neutral colour that you can contrast against each other, and you can work them together to make your presentations look professional, to look neat and clean, but also to be really easy to understand. If you've got that consistency, then your audience's brains will work quicker to understand the meanings and pick out that really important information as quickly as they can. Now, the next thing to think about is changing the size of different elements. So you don't have to stick to realistic sizing. You can absolutely play with the size of elements on your slides, on your presentation, to highlight things that are important. Remember when we looked at that mid-season sale fonts, you had different sizes of fonts going on. And in the best example, the most important information was actually simple and bigger than the less important information. Okay, you can do the same with your graphics. If I look at this particular information, I can't tell whether cappuccino, Americano, or mocha is the most popular coffee. We've just got 3 that to me look like they probably sell the same way. However, I look at this, they've got bestseller is actually the Americano, then cappuccino, and then the mocha. And I know this because they've used sizes, and also they've used that lovely kind of Olympic podium to show which is most popular. So using of hierarchy in the images themselves, but also in your fonts, because if you see here, once you start to break it down, as well as the coffee cups, the images being different sizes, so are the sizes of the text. They make it easy to pick out which is the best seller. It leaps out at you without your brain having to do any work at all. This one, I'd have to rely on the person telling me the information, which of course makes it less likely that I'm going to remember that later. I'm going to ask you in 3 days' time, you are going to know it was the Americano that was the most popular. The next thing to do is to use visuals that really help you to aid your understanding, all right? So if we're presenting information, and we might want people to understand quite complex information, if we can find a way of visualizing that information, then that's really going to help. It's going to help us to tell our story, and it's going to help our audience to really understand. When we're talking about visuals, we've got bar charts. Bar charts can help you make comparisons, like we had with our beautiful grey and blue bar charts. Maps, as we've got in this example here, to show, rather than a list of locations, which people then have to use their knowledge of geography to place, a map will really quickly and easily show that information. It could be a timeline, it could be flow charts, it could be diagrams, mind maps, Venn diagrams, lots of different ways of contextualizing that information. And if you want to make people feel an emotion, feel a connection, then faces, photographs of real human faces are fantastic for doing that. People respond to people. You don't want your audience to be left wondering. You don't want your audience to be forced to think. You want to use graphics to make that information as easy for them to digest as possible. And the other thing I want you to think about is when you're designing it, think about how the different elements can be as inclusive as possible, as accessible to everyone in the room as can be. One way to do this is to think about how your colours play against each other. There's a term called colour vision deficiency, which is a good catch-all for anybody who has any problems differentiating between colours. I must say, some of these, if I were to see dark text on a light background with a lot of contrast, is the easiest way for most people to see colour. I'm very short-sighted. Without my glasses, I'd be able to read that, but I actually wouldn't be able to read that one. It makes it harder. The font is thinner. There's lots of rules going on in there. Strong colours contrasting make things easier. You can also use colours alongside visuals. So here we've got showing a progression. It's very difficult to see the different progression on the bottom example. Whereas using the top example, where we've got very clear, this is sent, this has been delivered when it gets coloured in, and then there are 2 ticks to show it's been read. So you're combining elements of a clear visual, a strong design, with the colours that are going to help you read it. And of course, when it comes back to font size, using a big, clear, simple, easy to read font is going to help when you are making those graphics come alive. And that's great for both those people like me who have problems with their eyesight, but also people at the back of the room. You want everybody to be able to understand it as quickly as possible and not do too much brain power. All right then, so now it's time for you to think about your presentations. I want you to take a couple of moments and think what is the 65% of tonight's session that you want to take away in three days' time? What do you want to do to make your graphics stand out in your next presentation? Let Annie know which of the top tips you want to incorporate next time. And because we have come together, we've come to our end of our time together this evening. I hope you got some useful tips. Let Annie know, as I say, what is useful to you, because that's going to help to cement that knowledge as well. Another top tip just from me is to get your audience active. Don't just wait for them for the knowledge to be poured into their head. Get them active learning, and that's going to really help make those presentations stick as well. So don't forget, we've got lots more Google Digital Garage webinars running in lots of different subjects. Check out the link in the description below. It'll take you through to our website. It's probably how you found us here this evening. Lots of different topics available to watch. We've got courses to take. We've got videos there. And if you're based here in the UK, keep an eye on the face-to-face element, because we are coming around the country and might be coming to a town near you soon. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Annie and I wish you a lovely evening and look forward to welcoming you again to another Google Digital Garage training session sometime soon. Have a lovely night.